In the 1900s and prior to the early 1900s, the church was at the forefront of caring for the community. They saw that as a natural expression of who they were. You can go to passage after passage. I just think of the book of Titus, where Paul tells us that we're to teach our people to do good works, and that Christ came to purchase a people who would be zealous for good works. And you see that Ephesians 2:10, that we have been created as his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. Those are the result of conversion. And so when you take passages like James chapter 1 and we're to care for the widow and the orphan, we understand what if you look back and you see what the nation of Israel did, God had always made provision to care for those who couldn't care for themselves, right? The orphan, the widow, the sojourner, the alien, right? The whole gleanings, right, was to care for people who couldn't care for themselves. Remember, they would take their land and they would leave some. And notice what they didn't do. They didn't kind of pick it up and home deliver it to them. They said, have them come out and pick what they need for their family and care for them that way. There was always provision made. And so the church, if you look back in England and in Europe and in the United States at the time, they would function that way. They would function with the thought that we're to be salt and light in our world. And usually the people that we need to go to are the ones who have the least. Well, it's interesting. In the 1900s, when you had the rise of the social gospel under liberal theology, the dichotomy wasn't strict. You could begin to see people, and over history, and we know this, if you study anything, that everybody's always kind of on track, and someone seems to just kind of veer off. And they go, and sometimes people take a sharp right, and they go in another direction. And what was happening is that movement was beginning to take effect on the evangelical church, and now all of a sudden there was the liberal church, and they were the ones doing the social gospel. You no longer have to preach. You just show Christ and his love by your works. You start going down that road. Then in 1929, when the Great Depression hit, and you had Roosevelt's New Deal, he took all these programs that the churches were doing, and he began to create jobs by creating government institutions to do the things that the church was doing. Caring for the poor, caring for the homeless, right? Caring for the orphan. Orphanages began to shut down because a whole fostering system was starting to be developed that we have full-blown now. But you have this whole thing, and what was the mantle of the church was taken away by the government. And so what happened is that the fundamentalist movement kind of made the divide that said, if you do this, that's social work, that's liberalism. We need to be about preaching the gospel. That kind of mentality wasn't prior to that season of time. Spurgeon, the prince of preachers, he built orphanages. Right? He did orphanages, and on Christmas morning, he would go and hand-deliver gifts to kids. He did not see that as a contradiction of preaching the gospel. He saw that as his expression of the gospel having transformed him. And that is important, because that's where the church has kind of lost its balance. Move us forward, and now probably about the last 10 or so years, there's been this whole idea of social justice. The rise of the seeker-sensitive church. You can just go back and chronicle this. The seeker-sensitive church, in its attempt to reach out to people, started to create a subculture in their church where a lot of things they could do. Instead of going to the gym out there, they brought a gym into the church. Instead of going out to the restaurant out there, they bring restaurants, they bring everything here. And what happened is it developed people who were now not outreach oriented, but more inward focused. And as a result of that, you have these folks that just began to focus inward, that over the last 10 years, you had this thing called the emerging church, which is kind of on the downside, going away. They wanted their response was to go the other way, right? And it was, we need to go out and live like Jesus. We need to live on the streets with people. We need to go this way. And so now all of a sudden, it's this off balance again, right? And this commitment to social justice, and in our era right now, that's a big thing. And there's many things that we should be a part of. We work with ministries in certain countries that are involved in sex trafficking. where they're trying to save kids out of that. There's the orphan issue. There's all these different things that we should be a part of, but that is not the main thing, right? And whenever you have this pendulum swing, we make something the main thing that isn't the main thing, right? And so we had that shift take place. And so that goes on over and over again. And 25 years of this has kind of led us to kind of go back. What we like about what we tell people is we've been caring for people and having the church do that for the last 20. We've been trying to really work hard at that and hone that and make that better because we think that's important. The people that should be in the community caring for people is not the local social services. It should be the local church. They should be the ones identifying needs.